Hey everyone, welcome to Triple V, a show dedicated towards advancing the message of a free society. I'm your host, Micheal Shanklin. Today I'm joined with a real special guest, and I know I always say that, but my guests really are special to me. This is Rob Voluntaryist Rebel, also known as Robert Matthias. Robert is the man behind the YouTube channel, The Voluntaryist Rebel. He has been making YouTube videos now for the past 9 months on anarcho-capitalism and voluntarism. Many of the videos Rob makes are targeted towards waking up Ron Paul conservatives and constitutionalists who want freedom but still hold on to the idea of the state. During the past presidential election, Rob helped campaign for Ron Paul and doing petitions to get him on the ballot, sign waves, and other outreach campaigning. During the end of the campaign, Rob discovered voluntarism and now focuses his energy on waking up others instead of voting. I think that's a pretty good intro, guys. Rob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing wonderful. Like I was telling you right before the show, my son's doing wonderful, and Cheryl's off today, and I got Jeff Berwick on at 4 o'clock, so life's going pretty good today, at least, right?
I feel honored to be ahead before Jeff Berwick.
Oh, Berwick's, yeah, he's the man. I like him a lot.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. Yeah, so that'll be interesting, too. Anyway, so today I want to have, for those who have not seen our original interview, obviously I can't put the annotation in the live version, but you guys can watch it afterwards. I'll put it here in the corner for you guys. So go ahead and click this little link here, and you can go back to our very first interview. Probably about, what, it's been about 6 months now, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. I was like back in March.
I need to have you on more, you know that? So we talked about a variety of options. I think it was a little basic at that time. Today we're probably going to look at some new issues, especially with the current events changing up with Syria, the Free State Project. Obviously, last night, I want to get we got to talk a little bit about last night, what happened with George Donnelly and Chris Cantwell. That was a pretty big interview right there for both of them. And just to have that roundtable discussion, I thought was very important. Also, we're going to talk about Bitcoin. We're going to talk about a variety of different things today. So first, I think the thing that we really need to hit on, because when people come to this video, they're going to want to hear about some really, really important stuff current event-wise going on. And I think Syria, let alone Middle East, we should just call it Middle East propaganda, foreign policy area, right? Because it goes much deeper than Syria. Some people think, oh, wow, the Syrian government just did this one thing, and that's all that the U.S. government really is thinking about or caring about. They don't go deeper into the facts to look at the past 8+ decades of military intervention overseas. And I think one thing that most people ignore is the fact that the U.S. government has been trying, as it always has been through the last, half century, trying to dominate the world through political and militaristic force. And I want to hear your 2 cents on the whole Syria thing. We did talk about it a little bit last night, I think, but this is a new show. We need to talk about Syria. So I want to get your opinion on what's going on in Syria, what you think from the U.S. government, proof about chemical weapons, whether the rebels used them. What are your thoughts on what's going on with Syria right now?
Well, there's so much to talk about Syria. First, like the whole chemical weapons, I guess apparently is proof that there were some used, but there's no proof whether the rebels used it or Assad used it. That being said, there's already enough proof to show that the rebels, a lot of them, are funded or are Al-Qaeda. And if you're an American taxpayer, which I don't want to be, but if you do support the state, and you support this war in Syria with Obama and whatnot, you're supporting the United States Air Force of being the Air Force for Al-Qaeda, which should throw red flags to start with. I don't want the U.S. military to be anyone's Air Force, well alone Al-Qaeda's Air Force. Second, now this kind of goes to, like I said, I like to target Ron Paul conservatives and whatnot. And they're going to be all up, like, the president can't declare war, only Congress can. Okay, so instead of one person declaring war, it's okay for like a majority of just 218 people to declare war for 300 million people. That doesn't make any logical sense. Just because it's more than one, so it's a couple hundred more people, okay, this still doesn't make it right, and it still doesn't make it legit that they can take our resources and push and go to war and kill the people on the other side of the planet in our name.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess this brings up, how does war begin in the first place? And it all comes from taxation, right? Without taxation, they have no ability to buy the Tomahawk missiles and the drone bombs and the anti-children life toys that they play with. So Yeah, obviously I agree with you. Syria is it is a shithole right now, and I guess my opinion on this is I don't believe in either of the statisms, right? The Muslim Brotherhood type Al-Qaeda members that are trying to, which I want to sympathize for a second with the Syrian people who are probably or could be like us had they had the opportunity, had they had a rampant internet and a little bit more freedoms like America once had because of all of our how close we came to anarchy in the past, which is why America still today has some prosperity, although it's dwindling rather quickly as government grows. But I feel bad for a lot of the people who could have been libertarians who don't take sides and are stuck in Syria, right? Imagine there's a little 5-year-old girl in the middle of Syria right now who just died from the chemical gas attacks. It's just a sad scenario outright. And they do have a reason to be upset. Every government citizen has a reason to be upset with the government that they're trapped to, right? So the people in Syria, obviously, inviting U.S. military intervention to come on this fucking crusade of love and democracy and whatever lie that they're trying to or facade they're trying to show just to pump up troops and to get people behind the troops through more support from the public domain. It's obviously just a shitty scenario that's not going to come out into the best marginal consequence in the end, right? So the ends will not justify the means, because what happens is, I think somebody made a picture the other day, Robin, and it perfectly nails the way I feel. They said, somebody used chemical warfare in Syria, so the U.S. government's response is to go drop more bombs on Syria, and it's like, that you're right. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Well, it really doesn't make sense. It's okay for the Syrian government to use metal bullets to wipe out a bunch of people, but heaven forbid a chemical is used.
Yeah, because as we know,
makes no logical sense.
Well, even if let's go with the hypothetical story that the USA can't prove. The U.S. government can't prove that the Syrian government actually used the sarin gas. Well, in that case, I guess what I'm trying to say is, even then, we don't even have proof of it. We have no proof of it. And I think what the U.S. government's trying to do is, like it always has, is just trying to get people into war. And I saw a video that Storm Clouds Gathering made. Did you see that video yet?
I saw like the first 10 minutes, so I didn't get a chance to watch the rest of it, though. I know what you're talking about. You
pretty much watched most of it. He was saying where they had basically said that they know that Assad and the government over there had used it, but there's tons of proof that says they haven't, and they haven't produced any evidence that it has. So we're trying to, what the government's trying to do is push people into war. That's what it really comes into, is to get this country into war. It's very good for Halliburton. If you noticed, the second that the chemical attacks happened in Syria, Halliburton stock went up, or excuse me, was it Blackwater stock or Halliburton? I think it was Halliburton stock. It shot up about 10-15%, and I'm sure it's only going to rise as World War III continues to get closer to us. Do you think this could turn into a World War III scenario like I do?
Yeah, I mean, with there's the fact that Russians have bases there. The whole Iran saying they'll come to defense of Syria, it could be a powder keg. Like, I don't want it to be like that. Obviously, nobody does. But yeah, I definitely see it being something where it can blow up to a bigger war than what it really is. Because you can always have what's the terrorist group in Lebanon? Not Hamas, but drawing a blank. You know what I'm talking about, the ones that they launched missiles at Israel all the time.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
I can't think off the top of my head. They can jump in, and it is a powder keg. It really could be. It's not we're not the policemen of the world. We shouldn't be doing it. And I don't even see it as us being the policemen of the world. At this point in time, I just see it as a wag the dog scenario where they don't want us to talk about the NSA and Snowden and Manning and stuff like that. They don't want to talk about what's going on here. We just need another distraction for a few months. Even if it's for a month, it's just to stop talking about what's going on with the NSA right now.
Yeah, I guess my fear really is that this could blow up because, as we know, Iran does have a defense pact with Syria's government, and Russia and China have a pact with Iran. So basically, if we attack Syria, it's going to pull Iran in. If the U.S. government attacks, I have nothing to do with it. If the U.S. government and the politicians and lobbyists attack Syria in their quest for whatever power and domination they want. This could lead in a bunch of countries into war. Now, Putin had just said, I think it was last night or this morning, in either case it doesn't matter, he said that if there is absolute 100% proof, which there isn't, that the Syrian government did actually use the chemical weapons, well, in that case, they were going to allow attack with the United Nations as well on Syria. So in that case, it would not lead to a World War III scenario, because China would never go against Russia right like that, right? They would probably just camp out and let them do whatever and say, well, maybe we're cleaning out an ally's house kind of thing. But if that's impossible anyway. They can't prove the evidence that the Syrian government did it. So Russia will not support any type of interaction against them, even if it's UN sanctioned, right? It's sanctioned in not in the sense that you cut off supplies to little kids in Iraq. Sanctions as in, we agree with this and we want you to do it. It's funny how the term can be used for both. But anyway, I do not see much coming good out of the future of this. Should have never gotten to this point, but of course it all starts in 1953. It's really the turning pivotal point when the CIA went into Iran, overthrew Mossadegh, propped up the Shah, and that lasted for
I love how they declassified that a couple of weeks ago. It's almost like they're waving their finger in front of us, like, yeah, we overthrew another president from another country. Yeah, we did that, but that was for oil, and that was a long time ago. It's different now. Things aren't the same. We're good guys now, or something like that. It's just funny that they literally declassified that right before all this is going down with Syria.
Yeah, and there was a war propagandist for the government basically saying, well, Woodrow Wilson didn't get us into World War I, and then we had the Lusitania. FDR, he didn't get us into World War II until after Pearl Harbor. Look at all these lives lost since they didn't get us into war. And I keep thinking in my head, thank God we didn't have the Cuban Missile Crisis. Imagine if America had just attacked Cuba. We'd have been in a huge war. But imagine we didn't. We held back. We said, we'll let them make the first move. And, of course, they didn't. And so everything calmed down, and we have kids that are alive today that wouldn't have been alive, and they're adults and having more kids. Thank goodness for the circle of life allowing to be continued, at least in that one small instance in this world where politics cannot buy out the money sector and try and do everything with it. Like I've always said, I don't want to get politics, or I don't want to get money out of politics. I want to get politics out of money. Yeah. I think that's a really good one. But any last statements on Syria and the Middle East before we move on?
It's none of our business. We should be out of it. Well, what do we say? I hate saying the word we, because it's not we. It's, there's a government that says they represent me, which is just, want to steal a thing from Nima Fidelity, rhinos are just representative in name only. They don't represent me. No, the U.S. government shouldn't be involved building empires and destroying Middle Eastern countries left and right. It's not something, if they want to declare some sort of legitimacy, bombing people all the time whenever it's beneficial to just the United States government, it's not the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a sad scenario, and I wish the people of the world the best. Just because I don't vote to send my American military to come to your country, please realize that I'm not trying to fight against you. I don't care about you. It's that it'll make the situation worse, and I'm doing it because I do care about you, and I think Rob would agree with me on that. So, all right, let's move on. We got to talk. This is obviously the topic of last night. And I love the Free State Project. I really do. I love the Free State Project and what they're doing and Porkfest and all that stuff. And I know Chris Cantwell does too. And I know you do too.
Yes, I'm a signer.
I do have an issue. With them kicking out Chris Cantwell while he's saying the exact same things as Larkin Rose, and then they pay Larkin Rose. To me, it's like, guys, what are you doing? Chris Cantwell never said go out and shoot the mail lady. He made an explicit statement saying that he doesn't want people to go out and just, he got a speeding ticket the other day. It's not like he just pulled, and he had his gun on him. It's not like he just pulled the gun on a cop and shot him over a speeding ticket, right? Chris Cantwell understands how freedom works. I really do believe that. And I do believe he understands, unlike some voluntarists, that there's going to be a time when the state ups its violence on us. Some people are like, well, when the state starts using violence on us, it already is using violence on you. It's just not en masse yet, right, as much as it could be. And so, look in other countries that are really, like already where America's headed. It's like you're just watching America go down into the toilet into another communist shithole. But the reality of the world is that the Free State Project really is a good movement, but for them to ban Chris Cantwell over him basically saying that you have a moral, not that it's technically a tactical move, but that you have a moral right to defend yourself against state aggression, to me is absolutely ridiculous. And I can understand they're trying to keep an image. I want to hear your opinion on this, and I don't want to steal all the heat. So I want to hear what you have to say about it, and we'll go back and forth.
All right. I understand why the FSP board did what they did. I don't agree with it, but considering Concord came out, one.
Here in a second. I'm sure he's coming right back in. Come back in. I can edit this out afterwards too. All right.
You see me?
Yeah, sorry about that, Rob.
That's all good.
I don't see you, but
hold on.
Yeah. I don't know. You gotta love Google Hangouts. There we go. We're back. All right.
Yeah.
Less than a minute delay. Sorry about that, everyone. So what were you saying? Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I understand why the FSP did it. It's more of a PR reason why, because especially after the whole Bearcat situation, where we're labeled as terrorists, and he's coming out saying that we have the right to kill him. It was probably kind of a bad timing, but at the same time, it's a win in his book because it gets we're talking about when the line is where you draw a line where it's okay to shoot a government agent and whatnot. So I understand why he did it, and it's kind of a win for him to get this message out, and it's a message I think that should be probably talked about within the volunteer circles and whatnot. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it really matters that they kicked him out. It sucks that they did, and I hope they are not logical and consistent and do not take out Larkin Rose from the FSP, because he does a lot of great work, and I don't want him to be targeted as well, because he is saying the same thing as Chris Cantwell. But I think they just made more of an example of Chris Cantwell and trying to save some face with regards to the whole Concord Bearcat thing. But they can't stop him from living there, and he's still going to support people moving to New Hampshire to be part of the Free State Project. So to me, it's just more of a PR campaign that some people don't agree with.
Well, my issue with it is everything that Chris Cantwell said, everything was inside of the non-aggression principle, right?
Oh yeah, he fully supports the non-aggression principle, but the thing is, there's a lot of pacifists also within the Free State Project. There's a lot of people that don't think that violence should ever be used, even in self-defense. But him saying using violence or force in self-defense, that is completely within the non-aggression principle. There's a huge debate within that, within the movement.
Well, I think the real problem is the gray line, right? Everybody has a different opinion of when we should defend from the aggression, right? If everybody said every single second that somebody comes up to my door to kidnap me, you're going to have all your neighbors out there with shotguns and shooting at the cops. The cops aren't going to come get anybody, right? I mean, let's be honest about this. So if we all stood up and said, fuck you, you terrorists, we're not going to do what you say. If you go to my neighbor and try to kidnap him and steal his money, we're going to have 1,000 people with our own private tanks rolling up and stopping you, right? We can still have roads and hospitals and all the rest of this stuff without you guys stealing people from people at gunpoint. And so I think that if more people understood the gray line, that line that nobody seems to know where it's at, it's like no man's land of where do we use defense. If everybody understood that, I think we'd have a much more, at least, educated movement. Not that we have to utilize violence, right?
Well, the big thing, we should never utilize violence, but in self-defense, that's, to me, everyone has to draw their own personal line. That I can't make that decision for anyone else. You make the decision where you think it's right to use force in self-defense. But that being said, the reason why this is like a hot button issue in regards to the Free State Project and people that participate in it is there is a lot of movement and a lot of momentum behind it. They've gotten a lot more signers, a lot more people have moved. It's not out of the realm of possibility that in some point in the future, perhaps in our lifetime, maybe not, I'm hoping in our lifetime, that in New Hampshire anyways, they can become the majority, or at least have the momentum behind them within the state to where they outnumber the government, where they actually do have the numbers to be, you know, to be able to stand up against tyranny.
Well, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen when it comes to that point? When you have 100,000 voluntarists and the government says pay us 35% of your money, and they say fuck you.
I'm not really worried too much about the local and state police doing anything like that, or governments in New Hampshire. In all honesty, I think at some point the Free State Project could, like, you know, if they participate, there's a lot of free staters that do go into elections as well, but, you know, they can still change public opinion within New Hampshire. I think they have a chance to secede at some point if they get enough people in New Hampshire to want secession. The question really is, what happens next? If, say, they secede, or they get to the point where they take over the government, or they get rid of the government of completely in New Hampshire, what do the feds do? And the feds will probably roll in. They'll roll in with tanks and predator drones. I don't know what they're going to do, but at some point, hopefully that doesn't happen, but it would be their hands. And what do free staters do at that point? But that's all hypothetical at the moment now anyway. So,
well, I still think it's a good discussion to have,
like
the violence one, because we have to have game plans. You know, so let's just all go to this one place and we'll see what happens, right?
That's the whole thing that Chris Cantwell was talking about. Is like, we need to start talking about this, because at some point that may become a reality. It's not a reality now. No one should ever shoot a cop right now, because in all honesty, you're just going to get yourself killed and you're going to hurt the movement. But at some point, you know, if we do get the numbers in a small location, we could stand up theoretically. And what do we do then? And that's the big debate right now.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. All right, good stuff. Let's move on to another topic. I want to talk about the Constitution for a second, right? Because we've been talking about Syria, we've been talking about the Free State Project. But where's this Constitution that's supposed to be giving us all these freedoms, huh? Why do we have to make Free State Projects and talk about Syria and unconstitutional wars and all the rest of this, right? Obviously, you would agree that and I know you do, that the videos that you've made have pointed out the Constitution is bullocks, right? If we're going to take George Donnelly's words for the self-ownership principle as being bullocks, we can easily identify the Constitution as bullocks as well, although it does have some things that are really attractive to people, such as individual freedoms outlined in them. But at the same time, I guess the way I view the Constitution, I want to hear your opinion on this, is we have this Constitution. Let's say it's, you know, the size of the screen is the Constitution. So you see my screen, right? Now imagine the freedoms side. Most people think of them as like being like, let me see, I got hands here. About 95% of the screen is the Constitution's all freedom, just about, right? Whereas to me, the Constitution has about that much freedom and about that much tyranny. You see what I'm saying? So the percentage-wise, to me, when I look at the Constitution, it's like, oh, you have to pay us your money. You have to do what we say. We can build up this military and the centralized violent monopoly around you, and back in the day, arrest you for alcohol and all the, you know, take half of your property and all this other nonsense. And then it says, oh, and you have freedom of speech. Except in this zone, at this time, I'm doing this, and this government law says this, and then you have the right to bear arms, except for this gun and that gun, and how dare you have that magazine, and oh my gosh, you're doing it in that state, you know? And, I mean, the state capital, you can't even own a firearm, or they kick in your door and kidnap you like Adam Kokesh, right? So obviously the Constitution is worthless. I think you agree with me and Lysander Spooner and the rest of voluntarists when they say that either the Constitution failed or it enabled the government we have today. What do you want to say to everybody about the Constitution?
I think it's really both. I think it failed and allowed the government we have today, because they follow everything in the Constitution that gives them more power, and they completely disregard the few parts of the Constitution that prevent them from doing anything. You know, they will use everything under the sun under the Commerce Clause to regulate everything under your lives, which is pretty much what's going on today. They use every reason under the sun to lay taxes on you. just like how we're talking about that story where they're taking land along the border. That's part of eminent domain in the Fifth Amendment of the Bill of Rights. They're following that exactly. But when it comes to the 10th Amendment, where any power is not delegated to to the federal government, thereby delegated to the people or the states, they don't follow that whatsoever. So, and they don't follow the Second Amendment, and they don't follow the First Amendment. If I were to write a Bill of Rights, I would have stopped at the first line, Congress shall write no law, and just ended it right there. But that I would have get behind, but obviously that doesn't exist.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too. You'll never have a constitution that's not statist. So when people are like, well, we need some kind of a constitution, all you're doing is setting up a power structure for people to fight over. And that is actually not natural, believe it or not. Most people, the market actually operates without that type of a forced hierarchy structure. That is the natural order, right? That is the spontaneous order, the order that's supposed to be. But when you set up these forced hierarchies that nobody agrees to, and a lot of people don't want, well, obviously you're going to have some issues down the road, right? And this is why a free society, I think, it only proves the point of a free society. You'll never be able to have a constitution and have freedom in the end. Anytime you set up a constitution, you're also setting up a government. Anytime you set up a government, you're enabling it to grow as it is inevitable. And just like I always said about America, it's just turning into another fascio communist shithole. And that's really, it's just becoming another nation, right? Where it once was at least this facade beacon of freedom, and it did have a lot more, and we did come close to anarchy with the even before the Articles of Confederation and before the original Constitution. This region was booming, was going through the Industrial Revolution, and even with the Industrial Revolution, they were even ending slavery. There's a lot of good things that came out of the movement in the 18th, 17th, 18th century, I'd say. But at the same time, I think we have to point out the fact that the Constitution itself enabled the government to come back and build back up, and look what it's turned into. It's absolute wreck.
Well, a lot of people don't realize, like, the Constitution was basically, you can consider that a military coup of its time, with George Washington rolling in with his troops, and they were there like 6 weeks beforehand, and they decided who came into the convention, who didn't. It was all done behind locked doors. There was no press allowed. No one knew what was going on. I mean, 30 people signed that document, and that handled 4 million people at the time. And on top of that, the signers of the Constitution, there's only a couple people that signed it, Benjamin Franklin being one of them, that signed the Declaration of Independence. Most of the people that signed the Constitution had nothing to do with the Declaration of Independence away from Britain. To me, looking at the past, like, a lot of people, when they come from the state schools, public schools, whatnot, the history that they've learned is wrong. The Constitution should never have been written, and I would have considered myself an anti-federalist of the day. I would have campaigned against the adoption of the Constitution in the colonies at the time.
Yeah, me too, because we support your individual freedom. Who would have thought, right? Let's move on to another topic. Bitcoin. Bitcoin's actually up to, what, over $140 a Bitcoin right now, on fire, scorching. I'm afraid for a little mini bubble, I think it's going to pop and come back down over the next month. But we'll see what happens. Obviously, this is all speculation and hype from my end and bias. Hopefully it comes back down. I'd like to buy a little bit more and invest again because I don't think Bitcoin's personally going anywhere. Obviously, there are some security risks with it. It's not fully anonymous. It's pseudo-anonymous. But at the same time, it does have a lot of great applications, especially with the state being around. Not that Bitcoin wouldn't be around without the state. I think it would lose a lot of, if the war on drugs ended tomorrow, Bitcoin's going to go down in price, right? Let's be honest about that. But at the same time, I think Bitcoin is a really good way to avoid paying taxes in the short term. So in other words, right now I accept Bitcoin on my website, nonaggression-apparel.com, where you can buy some great shot glass and bumper stickers and t-shirts. Anyway, sorry for the plug. But on the website, I do take Bitcoin. And
I take Bitcoin too, by the way. You can always put on my YouTube videos.
There you go. Donate to Rob. He does really good work. And I accept Bitcoin, and obviously I don't have to pay taxes, right? So I can skirt the tax issue, and now, at least on the income tax, because the state supposedly views that as barter, right? That's supposedly what they view it as. But then they say if you take the money out and you made an investment on it, you have to pay capital gains taxes on it of some type or another, right? So, they are trying to put their hands on Bitcoin more and more every day. Who would have thought the government would have tried to incrementally increase their power on something? But I still like Bitcoin overall. I think it is helping us, weaken the dollar and at least weaken the fiat currencies of the world. A lot of people, there's some regions that have, 10% of their currency in Bitcoin, or at least I think it's up to at least 8 or 9% in Turkey or Greece it was. And so, you have these, which obviously makes perfect sense, seeing as how you don't know what that government's going to do. I mean, that is just, you think you're in a seriously messed up government today, which you are. Imagine being in Greece where they're like, oh, we're just going to steal, a fifth of your money out of your bank account today. And people are like, what?
Yeah.
you can't just do that. Well, I guess we can, because we're the government, right? We're here to protect you from well, who are you here to protect us from? Well, obviously not from you guys.
They don't even do that here. They just take it straight from your paycheck before it even goes into your bank account.
Yeah, or they just use the printing press.
Yeah.
Or they put it onto your grandchildren who haven't even been born yet as debt, and make them pay for all your stuff today. What a bunch of anybody who's over 50 today and still supports Social Security and stuff like that, they are some of the lowest life people I have ever met in my life. Because you're just indebting your grandchildren so that you can have Social Security that you should have paid for your own retirement. And what are you doing? And you're putting in the cost on your kids because they're unborn. They can't even talk to you. And then when they're born, you're not going to tell them about it for 18 years, probably ever. So half the kids that you give birth to after you've robbed them and ripped them off won't even know they're being ripped off and robbed. Well, at least Bitcoin, you can't do that with Bitcoin, right? Nobody can make IOUs through treasury notes for Bitcoin. So this would be nice. One thing, my thing is, obviously, do you understand the regression theorem, Rob?
Say that again?
Do you know about the regression theorem from Mises?
No.
Okay. The regression theorem, well, I want to hear your 2 cents on Bitcoin first, and then we'll talk about the regression theorem afterwards.
I view Bitcoin as quite possibly one of the greatest inventions on the other side, besides the internet. Not so much as Bitcoin, but cryptocurrencies in general. It gives, we live in a digital age now, and it just gives us another tool to use to operate outside the state, or at least outside the state as much as we can. And it takes the power away of the printing press from a central bank and literally gives every individual the ability to use currency on the way they want to use it, instead of having to use something issued by a state or federal, government branch, bank, what have you. So it's very liberating to be able to use a currency that is not controlled by any person or any bank.
Yeah, and I guess here's my concerns for. I love Bitcoin, I really do. Obviously, I just got done doing a little circle jerk about it, but I really have concerns with 2 aspects of Bitcoin: the regression theorem side and a little bit on the security side, right? Because the government could be breaking the code. All this stuff is recorded for every transaction that's sent around for Bitcoin is logged in the Bitcoin registry, right? So they have details. They can track everything around, although you can do cash backs, and there's ways to get your money out. I just hope enough people who might be doing what the government considers illegal means are really just victimless crimes. I don't want them in cages. So to you, please make your stuff more anonymous when using Bitcoin. Just don't send it over to Coinbase and cash out, unless it's really like Bitcoin that's actually earned with all legality through the state's eyes. So that's one of my concerns, is the tracking, and that the government can somehow find an algorithm, which they will someday down the road, maybe 5 years down the road, and then boom, they'll come back, and hopefully your time's run out for your statute of limitations, right? For whatever crime you were doing 5 years, 7 years previous. But at the same time, it is risky a little bit on that. And at the same time, let me go over the regression theorem from Mises real quick, and I think you'll understand this once we touch on it. Mises basically said, for anything to be good money, it has to have a basic industrial use first. So gold, silver, and especially gold, really, gold won out. Gold itself has a industrial use, not just for jewelry, but also for stereo equipment and a variety of different things, right? So people have a natural demand for that, whereas Bitcoin, other than Silk Road, there's really no thing that says, well, people are going to buy this, whatever. Now, I argue the point that since value is always subjective, gold itself really could have no use as well, because imagine you're on an island with one person. It's just you pick up gold that doesn't feed you, it doesn't give you a house, right? You're all by yourself on this island. Who cares about this gold? The gold is worthless to you. But because so many people have a perceived value of the gold being worth something and it being used in industrial use. But I think the two kind of go together. You know, the want creates the supply, or not the supply, the demand, but the demand also creates the want. See what I'm saying? So it's kind of like which one came first, the chicken or the egg, which doesn't really matter. Gold goes back and predates human history, recorded human history, I should say, at least. So we don't really know, exactly why gold was chosen. It just was, and that's it. It meets Mises' regression theorem. People have an industrial use for it. Its base. Bitcoin doesn't. Theoretically, a Bitcoin could go to $0 tomorrow, except for the fact that it won't. You know what I'm saying? That's the one thing that I think really bugs a lot of people. They can't understand where the regression theorem meets up with Bitcoin, is the fact that Bitcoin itself has no industrial use at its base, so it does not technically qualify for the regression theorem. What are your thoughts on that, and what do you think about the government tracking it and maybe using this stuff 7 years down the road, which I don't think that citizens who might be charged with crimes can use ex post facto, because law was made at the time. They just didn't find out about it later, so statute of limitations will be the only thing that I can see getting them off. I want to hear your opinion about this. Let's go a little bit deeper into Bitcoin.
Well, first touch base on if it going to zero, yes. I guess theoretically it could go to zero, but look at a dollar. The dollar can crash down be worth nothing too. So I mean, it's a gamble holding your funds in any currency, to be honest.
But the one thing that holds money up is the tax fund. So you have to pay the state the third of your property every year, so they can go and blow it, and blowing up children and building up crappy roads. So you have to give them a third of your money, but it has to be in FRNs. So that gives it some type of a fallacious facade of meeting the regression theorem under Mises, even though it doesn't really, and Mises understands that too, and so does Rothbard. At the same time, it kind of does meet the regression theorem on that basis. But I agree with you. It could theoretically hit zero tomorrow, or in 1 second from now, if everybody was just like, this piece of paper is worthless. It's a piece of POS, and it won't trade for me for anything. Do you see that happening? Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
But as I was going to touch base on the legality of like the government coming in trying to regulate Bitcoin and whatnot, I see a lot of trouble for them trying to really implement that, because I really don't think the government really knows what to do with Bitcoin. They see it as more of they want to control it in regards to criminal activity being done with it, but in all honesty, criminal activity or drug deals or whatnot are normally done with cash. So what's the difference if someone's using a Bitcoin or not? And if it's about tax evasion, I'm all in favor of people using Bitcoin for tax evasion because they're preventing theft. So, but yeah, I don't really see. I see them trying to regulate it, and I see them hurting businesses in the United States trying to accept it, or companies that do like trying to start up Bitcoin ATMs and stuff like that. I see them being hurt by the regulation of it, but just using it online and using it with websites or whatnot that are offshore, I don't see them doing much about it.
Well, another thing too is, how can they ever prove that was your account? Even if you put your name onto a Bitcoin account somehow, they can't prove that was your account, right? It's not like they have proof of you walking into a bank somewhere and you on video cashing out money from a certain checking account, and say, well, we tied you directly to that one through the video. There's no way you could technically do that. Somebody could just make a fake account with my name on it and funnel Bitcoins, from illicit activity through that and be like, well, it was Mike Shanklin. Well, they have no proof it was really me. So how are you going to really prove that any of these wallets are the people that you're saying that they are? Because of IP addresses? Well, that can be finicky too. I mean, think of proxies, right? Yeah. So, I guess the whole issue to me is, how are they going to implement it? I don't think it's going to be efficiently done or effective. Obviously, it will never be done efficiently with government, but I don't think it'll be possible at all to truly crack down on a regulation of at least trying to place people's names with a certain account and trying to show illicit activity. So even though they might be able to track all these records and they might be able to store the whole Bitcoin chain in their system, and I'm sure they're trying to decipher it some way right now, although they might not be able to do much with the information, right? Because that's what Washington is good for. They have all this information, they record all these phone calls, everybody, your grandma and your great uncle, and then they'll put them in this vault, and nobody ever really goes through most of it, thank goodness. Let's be happy about that one fact. And they have too many phone calls to go through. I mean, it's just almost impossible. So let's be thankful right now that the average citizen outweighs and outnumbers the government employees. That's one good thing we have going for us. Because the day that we have more government employees than we do regular citizens, it'll be much easier to spy on every single one of the individual citizens, peaceful or not, right? So I guess my concern with Bitcoin on that front is a little bit quelled by my own, delving into that topic a little bit more and thinking about it.
I just think it's them saber rattling. They're trying to scare people from not using it. That's what I see it as right now. I don't see them being able to do much in regards to people using it. They might be able to stop some businesses from using it, but that's about it.
Yeah, good stuff. Rob, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm going to try and have you back on real soon, buddy. How about the next month? Sound good?
Sure. Sounds
awesome.
Good.
In fact, we could do something every week. I love this. I could talk all day with you. So you're a great guy.
I hear you.
Hey, I want you to give out some websites real quick and also give a little closing statement to people.
All right. Well, I don't have a website yet. You can always find me on Facebook, Voluntarist Rebel, or I'm always on Twitter at Voluntary Rebel. You can always search up my YouTube video. Just search Voluntarist Rebel or just Voluntarism of Voluntarist. You'll find me on there. Other than that, my and a statement to people is live free as best you can and try and be positive and happy.
I love it.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that advice.
Yeah, stop trying to fall into the statist, doom and gloom. It is what it is. Just try to live happy and try to spread a message of peace, love, and liberty.
Yep, I completely agree, Rob. Thank you so much for being on the show again, buddy. I'll have you on soon, okay?
All right.
Thank you, everyone, for checking out Triple V. As you guys know, I have Jeff Berwick coming up at 4 p.m., so about 5.5, 6 hours away, something like that. And we're obviously, funny that Rob brought up the ATMs. I'm going to be asking him about how the Bitcoin ATMs are going. We're going to be talking about Syria. We got a list of options, so make sure you guys log back in over to voluntaryvirtues.com, because they wouldn't let me use the dot, over here on YouTube, or follow me over on voluntaryvirtues.com, the actual website itself. All these live videos are embedded, as well as the recorded versions as well. So you should easily be able to find whatever interview you want. But make sure you guys are back here by 4 p.m. today, Eastern Standard Time, for Jeff Berwick's show. And thank you so much for supporting the message of freedom. I'm Mike Shanklin with Triple V, and I will talk to you guys soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.